talk a lot about executive functioning support across the day, not just in the therapy room, but environmental supports when kids leave your therapy room. And a lot of times people say to me, I understand why I need to support these skills and I understand what these skills are, but how do you actually do it? What does it actually mean to provide environmental scaffolding, to support executive functioning skills in context, and to build some of those skills that are going to help kids engage in visualization, seeing themselves finish an end goal, strategic thinking, as well as being able to perceive the amount of time that is passing. So what I wanted to do today is share one of my strategies that I teach in the School of Clinical Leadership. And I want to do this with a huge caveat here because I get a lot of questions about what lesson plans do you offer, what therapy materials can I have that I can use to print and go and do in my therapy sessions. There's a lot of questions about actual deliverables. And I am going to show you something that has deliverables with it. There are things that I am going to give in this tool that look like worksheets, things that could be deemed lesson plans. But I want you to take that out of your head for just a minute, because what I'm going to share with you is technically in workbook form. But the reason I do that is because I am giving something tangible that's going to document what the procedures are that you need to do in order for me to transfer the knowledge from my head to yours, so that what you can do eventually is not actually need any kind of lesson plan or protocol that is delivered in a worksheet. What you want to do when you're thinking about executive functioning is, yes, you have some documented operating procedures for your sessions. You have things that you're doing. Maybe you even have them written down in some kind of a notebook or worksheet or protocol somewhere that you have stored in a binder, for example, or maybe it's electronic. But you want to have that in your head so that you can eventually do a couple different things. Number one, you want to be able to be so fluid and automatic with that protocol and with those strategies that you could just, see a student in a situation where they're struggling. Maybe you are hopping into a classroom and a student needs some support getting started with a writing assignment. You want to be so fluid with this protocol that you could do it with a pencil and paper on the spot, or with a dry erase board and markers, or something like that. Or you want to be able to know, what things do I have in my environment that I can pull in to do a lesson plan? And some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head that would be relevant for this would be things like an analog clock, or something like a calendar that you can actually write on. So something like that that's going to show time. And yes, you might have some digital tools that your students are using, but you want to make sure that you have those additional visuals that you can use to help students really understand and conceptualize the passage of time and things like that. The second thing that you want to be able to do, in addition to knowing how to do these strategies just on the fly, is that you want to be clear enough in what these protocols are in order to be able to coach and train other people. Because ideally, what I want people to do when they come into the School of Clinical Leadership is learn how to do these strategies with their students in their group sessions. But then the next stage of that is that you want to start coaching and training other people. So this could be if you are working with parents and you want to give them some strategies that they could use at home. In the school, one of the biggest things that you're going to want to be doing is making sure that you're training teachers or maybe other related service providers in these strategies, because what that's going to do is get to the point where those other people have automaticity with those strategies and everybody's on the same page and they know how to support students in those situations where they might need to get some modeling of self-talk, be reminded and get some cues to maybe use some of those strategies, like looking at the clock, looking at their surroundings, things like that, knowing how to use the right language in that situation. So you want to get to the point where you could actually take that information that I'm giving you and create some training materials, do some consultation and coaching with other people so that you can share this knowledge with others and make sure that students get the access to those supports in other situations beyond your therapy room. Really, what's happening in your therapy room is just the starting point for you to get solid in those skills. Then you want to take those skills and be able to coach and train other people with them as well. And if you can share them with your other adjacent therapists, for example, like I'm an SLP, and if I could collaborate with the social worker and the psychologist or a counselor or other therapists, occupational therapists. I know I'm probably leaving a few people out here, but my point is that you can learn it, you can share it with your colleagues, and then you can divide and conquer. And maybe you have somebody else that helps you train and coach other people as well. So again, huge caveat. This is technically a worksheet, but it's way more than just a worksheet. The worksheet is just a delivery mechanism for me to give the knowledge to you. When we think about executive functioning, we've got to get away from this idea of the lesson plans and the therapy sessions being the totality of our interventions, because that's not going to work. So let me pop over to the time tracking journal product so you can see what it actually looks like, because it's pretty simple. Okay, so here I am in the time tracking journal strategy. Again, this is a standalone product that I offer, but it is also part of the School of Clinical Leadership, which is a much bigger program that gives related service providers a complete framework for putting executive functioning support in place in their buildings. And the time tracking journal is part of it because it's going to help you develop your protocol that you can use to do direct intervention, as well as work with other people in your building to do all the things that I just mentioned, coach, train other people, and make sure that other people are getting access to all of this information. So I've got the videos here. And so the reason it's marketed as a journal is because what we're doing is taking things that normally happen internally and making them external by actually writing them down and saying them out loud. Eventually, you do want to phase it out so that you're not really required and you're not necessarily going through this whole thing for every single task that a student is doing. What you want to do is just use this to pull some of those things out externally. And when you actually go through and watch the videos, you'll see examples of the language that you're going to use, the questions that you want to ask the students, because all of these things that I've pulled out in the journal are things that people normally do in their head as they're having an internal dialogue with themselves in order to talk themselves through planning for a situation, maybe getting themselves through something that they don't want to do. It's just this whole dialogue that we have in our heads. All I've done is I've pulled it out and put it in journal form. Eventually, what we want kids to do is phase out and not necessarily need the journal per se, but start doing some of this stuff in their heads independently. And yes, of course, if they need to write things down as they're going through whatever it is they're doing, that's fine too. But all this is doing is just pulling those things out and making them more obvious to students because they're often not necessarily doing them on their own. So what we have here is there's a number of videos that go through just some things about executive functioning, some background, and then you actually get the journal right here. And so what it is that I've got a handful of tools that I use to deliver the protocol to you. So I have some Google Slides, I have some a Google document, and then I have a journal itself. And I'll pull the journal up itself in just a minute here. But I also have a written version of the questions that you're going to ask, all the steps in the process, about how long it should take. So what I've got here now is the journal itself. As you can see, it's really simple. And this is the PDF version. The Google Docs and the slides versions are all pretty similar. They just have it in a different format. So you can just see there, it just outlines the protocol as well, what the task is, the questions that you want to ask along the way. And again, the video explains how you want to go through these, how long you want to spend on each one, and how you're going to guide students through them. So this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it's really simple, and it's really simple for a reason, because we don't want to overcomplicate this. We want our protocols that we're doing and that we're using to train other people as well to be as simple as possible, because if you're working with teachers, they've already got a lot on their plate. You want to give them something that they can take to whatever they're already doing and make it easier. So that's why I do it in this simple format that you can use, that you can replicate. It's not a materials heavy protocol. It's something that you can use with the tools that you already have at your disposal. So to learn more about the School of Clinical Leadership, which includes the time tracking journal, plus a number of other tools and strategies, I talk about evaluations, I talk about how you can redesign your service delivery models and create a strategic plan for getting all of that in place. Because as you've probably learned in this video, putting executive functioning support in place is way more than just thinking about your lesson plans and your therapy materials. So if you know that there's not adequate support in your facility, in your building, if you're a school therapist and you know that your students need the support and they're not getting it, then you can be that person that makes a difference, whether you are a school administrator or not. A lot of times the school administrators need people on their teams to take initiatives and make sure that this support is in place. So you can be the catalyst for making that change in your building if you have the right tools and system. And that's what I show you how to do in the School of Clinical Leadership. To learn more about the program, you can go to drkarendudek-brannan.com/clinical leadership. The program is for school therapists. So this includes speech pathologists, social workers, psychologists, counselors, occupational therapists, or really any of the other support staff that's responsible for putting those interventions in place. Again, that's drkarendudek-brannan.com/clinical leadership.